Okay, welcome to Module 1, Planning for Success. So in this video we're going to talk about defining your goals, identifying your measures of success, and then finding your ideal user. So let's think about what sort of ad campaign do you want to run for your app. At the highest level, there are usually two types of campaigns that app developers use. The first is an app install campaign, and the objective of this is simply to drive new installs for your app. The second is an app engagement campaign. Now this is where you've got existing users who may have downloaded, used your app a few times, and they haven't been back in a set period of time, say the last 30 days. So you might want to advertise just to those users who have your app but haven't used it for a while on Facebook and encourage them to come back in and become re-engaged with your app. So before we move on, let's have a look at a couple of examples and we'll see exactly how an app install campaign works and exactly how an app engagement campaign works. So let's start with an app install campaign. How do they work? So on the left here we can see we've got the Facebook news feed and we've got an ad for an app just there. Now if user sees that and they click the install now button, that's the first step. They're then taken to the App Store page for the app within Facebook. So this comes up over the top of the Facebook ad. The user then decides to download your app based on what they see here, so based on your icon, screenshots, whatever. They click the Get button, they download your app and install it. That's one install. That's how the process works for an app install campaign. Let's look at app engagement campaigns now. With these ones, you might see an ad in the newsfeed similar to this. This is a bit of a mock-up that I put together just to show you as an example. In this one we can see we've got a big ad that says 4x sale, chips and gold. And we can assume that this has been targeted towards me because I have the Big Fish Casino app on my phone but haven't used it in a set amount of time. So they're saying, hey, there's a sale, you get 4x all the chips and gold with all purchases, exclusive offer, click below. If I was to click the play game button, the game would actually open on my phone and I would see this screen. Now that's a powerful feature of an app engagement campaign. So what you can actually do is when you're setting up these campaigns, you can use what's called a deep link. And I won't get into too much detail with that now because this is some more advanced material. But you can set up a deep link, and what that basically does is that allows the app to open at a set point when the user clicks that link. So somebody clicks play game and you've pre-defined where in your app that will open, and in this case it opens on the sale page. And that's how these can be really powerful. You can target users who haven't used your app for a while, or you can even go one step further and say who have made an app purchase in the past, target them with this ad telling them about a sale. Then when they click that, they're taken to the app and directly to the sale page. So now that we've defined our top level goal, what I want to start to get you to think about is what the next level down is. So what do you actually want to achieve with the campaign? So what I'm talking about here is, say you've decided that you want to generate more app installs. We want to look at why you want to generate app installs. What do you actually want to generate them for? And I've listed a few possible reasons here just to get you started and get you thinking and get you on the right track. So first of all, you might just want to generate installs for an app launch. If you're familiar with the Apple App Store in particular, you'll know that Apple actually gives new apps a boost for the first 7 days that they're in the store. So they get higher rankings in the charts, they get higher search rankings, and they get better keyword rankings. You might actually want to create a Facebook ad campaign to take advantage of that initial 7-day boost, to get a few more installs and to get even further up the rankings in that initial 7 days. So that's one reason. Another reason might be just to build a user base so you can collect some valuable analytics data. Sometimes it can be really difficult to get organic installs in the app stores, particularly to get enough to make intelligent decisions on where to go with the development of your app based on the analytics data. Basically, if you don't have enough users, you're not collecting enough analytics data to actually see the full picture of how your users are behaving and where you should make the changes. So you might just want to get a few more users through an app install campaign to purely for the purpose of analytics. If you're a successful developer, if you're one of the lucky ones who have an app that produces a nice amount of income per user or has a high LTV for particular user segments, you might want to run an ad campaign purely to achieve a positive return on investment. And all I mean here is, if you know you can run a Facebook ad campaign and acquire users for 80 cents each, and you also know that those users that you acquire are going to generate $1 each worth of revenue once they're in your app, then you might want to run an ad campaign purely for that positive ROI. You know you're going to make 20 cents on each user, so that's why you want to buy installs. And the final example I've got here is to bring existing high-value users back to the app. So this is a re-engagement example. So you might know who your high-value users are, and you might want to target them with an ad campaign to say, hey, come back to the app, check it out, we've added some new features. And that can be really effective because you know these guys, through your analytics study, you know these guys are high value, you know that they've enjoyed your app before, they've spent money in your app, and you want to bring them back. Next up, we want to talk about our measures of success. So now we know why we're running the campaign. Let's look at how we're going to measure whether we've been successful or not. So often I speak to developers and they get to the end of a campaign and I say, well, how did it go? Was it a success? And it's a really difficult question to answer for them because they haven't defined their goals or measures of success before they started. So they've said, I want to get some installs. Get to the end of the campaign. Well, how did it go? Oh, we got some installs. That's great, but if you paid $5 per install, is that a success? And that's why you need to define it before you get started. So we want to set quantifiable measures here. So we want numbers, we want figures. And again, I've put together some examples. These are just a few, but the idea, like in the previous slide, is just to get you thinking. So for the first example here, I've got to generate 1,000 installs at 60 cents each. So as you can see, they're both clear figures that we can measure at the end. So you might end up looking at the end and saying, got 1,000 installs at 58 cents each. That's a success. For the next one, it's a re-engagement example, and we're saying you might want to re-engage at least 20% of your users who haven't used the app for 30 days with a $500 budget. So now obviously I've just made those numbers up for the purpose of an example. Your budget's going to depend on, how many users your app's got and all that sort of stuff. Lastly, I've just said here, you might want to get your app into the top 200 health and fitness apps with X dollar budget. So that's another goal where you can say, at the end of the campaign, did we get our app into the top 200, yes or no? Success or not? Quantifiable, easy to measure figures. That's what we're looking for here. Next up, identifying your ideal audience. And this is all about defining who your ideal user is. Who's that person that's going to want or need your app? Now we want to be really specific here, or as specific as we possibly can be. I will be showing you later on some tools you can use to further refine this, but we do want to get as specific as we can straight away. So the first thing we're going to look at is demographics, then we'll look at interests, and then the different behaviors that are specific to our ideal user. So demographics, here are a few things to consider when we think about demographics. We've got the obvious ones like location, age, gender. Then it gets a bit more interesting, like relationships. Start to think about the sort of relationships that your ideal audience might have. Education, are they high school graduates, college graduates? Think about that sort of thing as well. Work. So you can be general here and think about, well, are they blue collar workers, white collar? Be more specific as well though. If you know that your ideal audience performs a particular job or works in a particular industry, make sure you write that down. Are they parents? Maybe you want to target new mothers. Maybe you've got an app that would be really are particularly useful for them. Life events, so think about things like upcoming birthdays, recently engaged, recently married, any major life event that your ideal audience may have. Politics, so any political persuasions, things like that, you need to write that down as well. And you might be targeting a particular generation, like Generation X, baby boomers, all things worth thinking about. Now, your ideal audience mightn't have particular, relationships or political persuasions, and that's okay. You don't have to write that down. We're just getting as specific as we can based on what we know about our audience. The next thing we need to think about is interests. So what does our ideal audience like? What are they interested in? We've got our general interests. So you might think about things like health and fitness. They might like playing video games. They might like to travel. But then once you've documented that, I want you to think about the next level. So get specific. What type of health and fitness activities do they like? Do they like running? Do they like yoga? Do they like weightlifting? We've said video games. What type? Arcade games? Are there even more specific games that you know they'd like? Write all of these down. And travel. What kind of travel? Overseas travel? Cruises? Do they like taking trips domestically? Anything like that. That's what we really want to start to narrow down. And one last thing we want to think about with interests is competitors. So you should be starting to think about what are some similar apps that my ideal audience are likely to use? What apps would this person have on their phone? What products would they buy? And who are the influencers in the industry that they would read, listen to, speak to, anything like that? So we really want to start to think about who this person is who you want to download your app, what they're interested in, and what products and apps they would also be using. And you'll see later in the modules why this information is really useful and why this is the key to a really well-targeted ad campaign. Lastly, we're going to talk about behaviors. Now, here are a few things to consider as far as behaviors go. We can think about things like, do they use a particular operating system? So whether we're talking on their computer, like, OS 10 or Windows. We can think about phones like iOS or Android. We can think about things like, are they technology early adopters, late adopters? And we could also look at purchase behavior. So believe it or not, you can target using things like purchase behavior in Facebook. So that can be a really powerful tool as well. So start to think about, do they buy beer? Are they vegetarian? So they buy a lot of vegetarian products. Obviously their purchase behavior is going to be different. They're not going to be buying meat. Any particular purchase behavior that you think might be useful to target your audience by? And then there's other behaviors too, like what are they planning in the future? Are they planning to travel? Are they planning a wedding? Anything like that that might be unique to your ideal audience. Okay, so by now we should have a really clear picture of what you want to achieve with your ad campaign. We should know how you're going to measure the success of your campaign. And you should have a reasonably clear picture of what your ideal user looks like, who they are, what they're interested in, and how they behave. Now, I've also created a worksheet for you that accompanies this module. Spend some time thinking about what we've just talked about and completing and filling in the worksheet, because that's going to really come in handy later on.